quick recap. Last time we started with my novella and we broke that big goal down into manageable tasks, which we have here. So that was a lot of fun. So now that we have all of these tasks, what do we do now? Well, we could just start throwing this together to make a project plan. It's doable. It might take more time than if we did a network diagram. Now, a network diagram is something that I did not actually learn until I took a PMP prep course during my MBA program. Uh, and I don't know why. The boot camp that I took when I first became a project manager did not cover network diagrams. But when I tried it for the first time, it was groundbreaking. It was like life changing almost. That what it is that it is a tool where you can take all of this and lay it out. It is a visual tool that you can put all of these tasks spread out in order from start to finish, from the start of the project to the finish of the project, where you can see everything in relation to each other. So with this, you can see dependencies. You can also see time. So you can see where maybe you have a lot of work happening in one section of time, where maybe if you're the only one doing the work, which is going to be for most authors, you might want to think about maybe you can move something forward. Now, another good thing about network diagrams is that it can show you where you have the wiggle room to move a task forward or back without impacting your timeline. A network diagram can also tell you your timeline. So if you have no idea when you want to release your book, but you know when you want to start working on it, this can tell you when is the earliest you could release that book. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start moving all these tasks into a network diagram to put them all in order from start to finish. And then once I get done with that, we're going to do a pass where I'm going to basically fill in all the dates. And then I'll come back and we'll recap what we just did. All right, so let's jump into it. All right, so so getting started, we have our work breakdown structure and all of our tasks. So really what we need to do is I'm going to drag my tasks down to where I have set up for my network diagram. But you see that we have it broken down to 40 hours and 40 days, which is what we did during the WBS. And then you'll see that we have these fields for ES, EF, LS, LF. What that stands for is early start, early finish, then late start, and late finish. And these are going to become much more apparent as we progress with the network diagram and filling it in. So jumping down to our network diagram, we have our project start, and we're going to fill that in. And so we're going to pick a date. I'm going to pick the 15th of June because that's when I'm going to start working on my research. So I'm going to type that in here. And then with the start date, it really could be any day you want. Because really it just deals with, when do you feel like you're ready to start this project. Now, if you have a specific date that you want to publish in mind, then, sometimes maybe you want to start with that date and work your way back after you set up your network diagram. So that can be entirely possible as well. But we're dragging our tasks up because it's just easier than having to keep on scrolling down. So now we're going to start putting our tasks in place. So first thing we're going to do is, of course, setting up my word tracker for my drafts is probably like the easiest thing that I can start off with. It takes like 30 minutes. And so now we're going to start just dragging tasks over. So I'm starting off with my research tasks. So researching the religious deities and then the curses, the mythological beings, really just like lining up all of my research tasks. And I'm lining them up in sequential order because I am just one person, and so I can't layer my research. I'm just not my brain doesn't work that way. Uh, so I'm doing it in more of a sequential order where I'll research one thing and then move on to the next thing. Now, one thing I will do in parallel is while I'm researching, I will start working on my character work. So start doing the background and bio for my main character first. And then once I have that in place, then I move on to working on my character arc for the main character. And as you notice, I did not put in the hours and days for this particular piece. So I'm going to drop that in here. I figured 10 hours is a good amount of time for doing the background and the bio, but working on my character arc does take a little bit more effort. So 20 hours feels appropriate there. And so I'm going to do that for my other characters, the side character, as well as uh, the love interest. Now, the love interest is not going to show up very often, so he doesn't get a character arc, but the side character is going to be a pretty big piece of the story. So she is going to get her own character arc. And then, of course, my main antagonist is I need a background and bio for them, as well as for the side antagonist. Okay, so now we're getting into more of the work with regards to the world building. So we have our deities with that. So I'm not going to drag the questions over, but I'm just going to drag just general world building tasks. So we have the deities, then we have Savannah, Georgia, and then of course we have Christian Hell. That one's of course not going to spend too much time on, and then we have the abandoned Olympus, and then the supernatural world, which is one of our heavy hitters with 30 hours spread over 15 days. So one thing that you'll notice when we start going through this network diagram is we are not working with hours here. We are working with days because when we build our project timeline or our project schedule, we're working with calendar days in order to basically calculate out our time of how long it's going to take us to get to our deadline. Okay, so those are all of our questions. So we just got to bring up the last three tasks over here. And that is, of course, our outline and our structure workbook. Now, for those of you who are pantsers, you may not need these tasks. I'm a hybrid of a pantser and plotter, so I do both. But of course, now we're working on our drafting and layering that work. So of course, I have my first draft, and then I have my rest period, and then I do my first round of edit, and then my second draft, and then critique partners and so forth. And so I'm speeding through this because this is just a little bit tedious. But basically, most of the work that I'm doing right now after I do all of my pre-production work is really just focusing on the drafting part, uh, with getting the reviews and that done. Now, after I finish my first draft is when I start doing some of my ancillary work, which is like the marketing and the public relations work. And so I will set up finishing the first draft as a dependency for that work. And so what I like to do with other categories of work like marketing and PR is I like to kind of create its own swim lane. So I put it either above or below the main line of work, which for me is the actual writing piece. Because a lot of this other work I can do either parallel or during these rest periods. And so I'm playing right now here with building the promotional materials because that is going to be like 80 hours worth of work over 60 days, which lines up really well with my editing period. And so now I'm dropping in the PR work, so defining the talking points, which I'm going to place after the creating the marketing plan because that is a dependency. Once I have my marketing plan, then I can have a better idea of what kind of talking points I want to build. And so right now I'm just kind of just layering and just like figuring out how it feels, and just really kind of going off vibes right now because I really haven't started plugging in dates yet. Uh, and this is one of the best parts of having a network diagram is it's so easy to move stuff around. Like if you were just putting stuff into a project schedule like in Excel or even writing it down, making these adjustments is a lot more work because you're having to copy paste or add cells, add rows. You can't move as quickly, or definitely not as quickly as you're thinking. And so that's one reason why I like this format of doing a network diagram before actually putting it into a project plan. Okay, and so now we're getting into our production work. And so we got the cover design and building our Substack page, which is a big piece of it, considering that I am going to be launching this as a Substack serial. And then, of course, part of the Substack page is image sourcing because we want to have like a cover image for the post, and then I have to decide if I want to have other images with the post within the story. And so that's something that I have to figure out. And then, of course, one of the milestones that we have for this is the actual like is launching the actual novella. And so that is a milestone. It's not the end of the project because, of course, once we launch it, then we have to keep on posting. So this isn't the end of the project. So this is just a launch day, and we haven't decided what that is yet. So we're just going to leave that blank for now. All right. So now I'm just kind of tweaking stuff, just kind of getting stuff in position. Because definitely one of the last things I'm gonna do is having to schedule when I'm gonna have the layout of the chapters done, and I'm gonna put that, of course, after I start the pre-launch marketing plan. And then now just kind of spacing some stuff out to see how it fits, and then of course I'll probably make some more adjustments as we start plugging in dates. One of the really good benefits here, as I've mentioned earlier, is that with the network diagram, you can get a good visual representation of where your work is heaviest. So, really, like where you might be overloading yourself or your resources. So, in this situation, with producing a novella, I'm really the only employee here. So, I'm doing all of the work. So, it's really important for me to identify where am I overloading myself, because I cannot risk burning myself out, because once you burn yourself out creatively, it's really hard to get back on track. So taking care of yourself is critical. And so now we're getting to the point where we're plugging in dates. And I've speed up the video here because definitely this is very tedious. And so it's like it's really just you're starting off with the dates. And one thing I did forget to do is to make all the connections, all the do all the connecting parts and show all the dependencies with these arrows. And so you'll see that a lot of them, have, one arrow to one, but then you see some that have two arrows going into one piece. And that's how you'll identify your dependencies. So you'll see here with the starting the pre-launch marketing plan, there are multiple things going into that thing. So there are multiple dependencies for that to happen. Now that we've done that, we're going to start plugging in these dates again. And so really it's just like, this is probably the most tedious part of the process, where you're plugging in these dates and just making sure that you're paying attention to the days. Now, one thing that I do here is it the early start date is you start at the beginning of the day, so you're counting that full day of work, and the early finish date is the end of that day. So you're counting the date of the early start and the early finish as days of work. But yeah, so it's just really fun to, like, going through this part of the process. I mean, it is tedious, but you really just get a good feel for it. Now, one thing that I do have to do is I'm noticing that this is spanning over multiple years. So I created a little divider to signify where 2027 starts, so that I just visually can know, like when I'm looking at these, I'm not having to punch in the full the full date with the year in every single box. I'm probably just gonna have to do it as I get closer to these years, when I'm going back with doing the late finish and late starts, because I have a feeling that we're gonna have a lot of space between these dates here. And so you see that I also created one for 2028 as well, because this is definitely going to be a multi-year project. Okay, we're getting close to the end in terms of filling in all these dates. Now, one thing that I didn't do the first time is I didn't plug in the tabs for all of the posts for the different chapters. So I have, doing the layout for the posts, doing a total of 7 of them, because I'm doing the layout and post and scheduling of the posts 3 chapters at a time. That was a lot, uh, which is pretty par for the course for this tool. All in all, from start to finish, from when I first started a network diagram to when I'm completely done, which we're about halfway through, it usually takes me about 30 to 45 minutes. And so we're roughly about the half point now, where we have filled in all the dates going forward. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go backwards. So we're going to start with this last post published date, and we're going to fill in the late finished field, and then go forward from there. So you'll see here where it says late finish and then late start. We're basically going to do what we did with those days and count backwards all the way to the beginning of the project. Now, as we're doing this, what you're going to see while we're progressing is you're going to see some gaps. You're going to see some spaces between when our late finish is and our early finish is. And so I'll dive in deeper to that, but that's going to be where we find our wiggle room of where we can move tasks and have some flexibility. So let's go ahead and jump in and do that. And then once we're done with that, what we're going to do is we're going to then take a break, come back and talk about what we find in this second pass through. All right, so going to be doing it backwards now, starting with the launch date and going backwards and filling in the late start and late finish. So what this is going to do for us is it's going to start showing us where we have some space, some gaps, where we can have some wiggle room. So we're going to fill this in, going from back to front, and when we get back to the start of the project, then we're going to be able to figure out, okay, where do we have some wiggle room? Of what tasks can we start later? What tasks do we not have wiggle room on that if we do end up being late or whatnot, that we're going to have to like severely impact the delivery date of our book? Like, what's really going to impact our launch date? And so when I first did the network diagram for the first time, this was the part that was really the groundbreaking part for me. Was really eye opening. I was like, oh, this is the value in this. Because like doing the front patch, you're like, yeah, I'm just plugging in dates. Like, what's the big deal? Yeah, big deal. But it's when you get to the end and you start going backwards, you're like, oh, wait a minute. Like some stuff, like I get more flexibility, and it really helps you identify, okay, what tasks are really the critical tasks. What tasks are the ones that I cannot mess up on, or that I cannot afford to have any issues with. And what that does is that helps you prioritize time and resources and focus. So if you have a task that you know that you have like 30 days of wiggle room on, then you can know that you can like put that one on the back burner for a little bit. But the task that you have 0 days of wiggle room, you know that one is top priority, especially when you are a one person show. Okay, so we're wrapping up here, getting close to the beginning, and then we are getting to the end, and we now have a new late start date for the project. Okay, so I got a little ambitious. That and I didn't want to make you all sit through and watch me go add and subtract stuff. So what I went ahead and did while we were on a break is I went ahead and did the subtracting of the early finish date from the late finish date, and got what we call slack. Slack is basically the difference between that late finish date and the early finish date. So you see these numbers up here? That is our slack. That is how many days we can move that task forward without impacting our timeline, without having to shift our published date. So what I want to do now is I want to kind of go over what I did here, and then also talk about this little highlighted portion here, which is called our critical path. Okay, so now we are looking at Slack. And so Slack is these big numbers here, the 43, 43, 47, 49, and the 242. How we get those numbers is you subtract the early finish date from the late finish date. And that gives you how many days that you can move these tracks forward without impacting the whole project. So you'll see that they are along this pink line. That's called the critical path. And so we have the lower numbers of Slack along this line. Now, sometimes when you have a critical path, these numbers are 0. But in this situation, because we have so much room between launch day and when we start, it's not 0. But if we were to move these, then it could get closer to 0. And that brings us to the end. This is a finished network diagram where we have identified not only our dependencies, but also our critical path items, and then also have identified our timeline. Now, what I will do next with this is I will take all of these tasks and the dates for them, and I'm going to use my template spreadsheet to build my project plan. And that's something that I will do a walkthrough on next week where I will plug in all this information into my spreadsheet to build a project plan where I will actually track the progress of each of these tasks. And that is one thing that helps keep me organized. Also keeps me sane, so I'm not freaking out about what should I be doing, am I late on doing something, and so forth. So until then, I want you guys to have fun. And if you want to try this on your own, I fully encourage you to do so. Again, you don't have to use a program like Figma. You can use PowerPoint, you can use Excel, Word even, or Post-its on a wall. Either way works. Uh, if you have questions or you get stuck in doing your network diagram, feel free to reach out to me on social media. I'm happy to answer questions and offer guidance. And then, of course, I hope you have fun. And with anything I share with you, this is not the gospel truth. This is just what helps me. All I ask is that you consider it and then take what works for you, leave what doesn't, and just have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.